Subhanallah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think first is to say that gender-based violence is something that is silent, it is insidious, it is under wraps to such an extent that we do not know the atrocity, the enormity of the atrocity in our society. And to take up the challenge, we first need to say that the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children is something that our government has put in place. And there's a very real reason for this. And maybe to add to that there's an international roll-out movement because women are so disproportionately affected by gender-based violence. And as such, they become vulnerable, and the children that are under their wing are just as vulnerable too. So yes, as a women's forum of the MJC, it is imperative that we take up the cudgels of this, we take up this challenge and we run with it. It is important that our communities need to know what it is that we are facing for us to be able to work with it. I think gender-based violence, first of all, is just the understanding that it is something that is uncomfortable, it is unkind, it is uncharacteristic for human behavior. It dishonors the individual that is subjected to it. And there's a range of different kinds of gender-based violence, different kinds of abuse that is termed gender-based violence. And the understanding of it is to know, first of all, that when we say it, saying the word is easy. When we're talking about the actual action and the emotion that flows from that, it is devastating. So the one that is most common that we know and that we see when we watch a picture is physical abuse, where you will see a blue eye, broken bone, and nothing can prepare you for how hard you have to hit to have a blue eye, or to be slapped with an open hand, or to be kicked against the ribs or against the head. So when we're talking about physical abuse, we're talking about slapping and fisting and shoving and pinching. It's things that we think it doesn't really fall under under the ambit of abuse, but yes, it does. Shoving is an aggressive move, and if somebody is stronger than you, it can be a devastatingly painful move too. The second one would be verbal abuse, and here we're talking about, and I like to bring it down to actual wording. When you tell somebody you're ugly, when you tell somebody you really don't look nice, or no matter what you do, it's something that slices away slowly at the self-esteem of that individual. And in itself, we can understand the devastation of it. Swearing and cursing and the loud, really, shouting at somebody. Those are all termed as verbal abuse. Then we have more insidious, much quieter, that we don't see, is emotional abuse and psychological abuse. And these are, it is the ones that we do not see, but those scars are the ones that are hardest to heal. It is the ones where we are systematically undone, where you are, by virtue of implication almost, you are told that you are not enough, you are not good enough, you are less than. So it offers the opportunity for the victim to really start second-guessing themselves and their own honor and their own dignity, and they become less. So psychological and emotional abuse, very hard. It is when emotion is love is taken away, or silent aggression is meted out upon the victim. And then lastly, not lastly, but we have sexual abuse, which we know is rife, and it is not something that is spoken about much, but within the ambit of marriage, oftentimes there is something called marital rape, and it is a devastating situation because it is not seen as such oftentimes, and yet it has a serious impact on the victim. Financial abuse, we know this one, when we are not allowed to work, or you have no income of your own and your complete dependence is on your partner, on your husband, which means that then entire power is given over to the husband because you are powerless financially. And all of these, the bottom line is the devastation it has for the individual. I think you can never, minimize how devastating it is for somebody to be in the power of somebody else, or for one person to be powerless in the face of another. The first thing that I see is that we have to first name the atrocity. And naming the atrocity literally means that we have to find ourselves understanding when abuse happens to us. And so when we know that it happens to us, or when we see it happening, that we can say that there is a way out. The silence is deafening, which means that we have an idea that it's happening out there, but not until it happens to us or it is close enough do we actually take up the challenge and do something about it. So the first thing is to break the silence. And that means we have to let go of the shame and the guilt and the pain that goes with it, so that we can actually unsilence this deep atrocity in our community.
You mentioned earlier self-esteem. These interventions are geared at raising the self-esteem. IHATA itself has farming initiatives here. They have creches, nurseries. They have a facility here to try and help build up the victims. It's a notable cause, Mualima. Your comments on it?
SubhanAllah. Yeah, by the time somebody has reached a level where they speak out, then you do know that it is already such a destructive component that there is nowhere else. And IHATA and organizations like IHATA, the first thing that is taught is that you are honored, and the restoring of your dignity is yours to take back. And then so when other avenues like offering skills or just skilling or upskilling an individual and offering them a spiritual mentorship and just support, sisterhood support, that in itself says that you are not alone. More than anything is the isolation a victim feels when they are abused. So it offers the opportunity for that person to know that there is a sisterhood supporting you. First of all, it is an Interfaith March, and this happens on the 29th of November, Wednesday coming, inshallah. It is within the 16 Days of Activism. I think first of all to say, importantly, is that we know that gender-based violence, it cuts across all barriers. It knows no religion, it knows no age, it knows no color, it knows no class. So no matter whether you are in Constantia or in Manenberg, or it doesn't matter, you have the potential is there that you could be affected by something like gender-based violence. For the MJC Women's Forum, taking up the 16 Days of Activism was a given. Latching onto specifically a march was really for the reason of to unsilence the quiet, the real silence that there is around the magnitude of gender-based violence in our community. And I feel it is oftentimes we are asked why a march. I personally feel that when we, in the times of the apartheid era, conscientizing, mobilizing, and raising awareness in mass is a good option. And when we are talking about the route we are taking, Klipfontein Road, we are flanked on both sides by really challenged communities, the Vlei, Vygiskraal, Bridgetown, Silvertown. So it's areas where it is a rife phenomenon in the community. So that was an important one. Something that has not been highlighted is the fact that it will be a silent march. Now, I've just earlier spoke about the deafening silence we have around gender-based violence. So the intention of a silent march is one, so that in the silence of the march, we will be honoring the women who have lost their lives, those women who are suffering under the the atrocity of gender-based violence silently. Those children who have been killed in our communities, right in our communities, due to gender-based violence. And we have to talk about the numbers. 1 in every 3 women have faced some kind of abuse in their lifetime. I mean, 1 in every 3 women, we're talking about 33% of a community. It's a devastating amount. When we're talking about children, we know that children should be our protected, nurtured band of individuals in our community. And when we hear that more than 60 or 70 children in this year alone has been brutally killed, not knocked by a car, brutally killed by an adult, then we know that we are in a crisis in our community. So this is the reason why the challenge of the march has been taken up, not only by the MJC Women's Forum, but by the EXCO, the presidency, and the constituency of the MJC. I think that first of all to say that the advice of the Prophet ﷺ is so beautiful, that the first line of action is to change it by hand. Now we don't mean you have to go and fight, but to really go in and say this is unacceptable. Secondly is to change it by way of speech, and the third, the weakest form of iman is to make dua. The important thing I think for us is humanity, and this is our deen, subhanallah, is to reach out. Somebody who is abused should know that they are not alone. Reach out and say that, I'm here, my shoulder is here, my arm is here, hold on to it. And even to our perpetrators, to say that this is not what our Allah wants from us. Oftentimes we just see the perpetrators as monsters. It is not so. Men or a perpetrator also needs the same road back to rehabilitation and recovery. So to be able to say, there's always a way out. And as a believer, we say, do not despair. Allah is always with you.